Hi, Julie.
Hello. Good to see you today.
Oh, it's wonderful to see you today. Hmm. Yeah. Deep sighs, long exhales,
Mhm.
breathing deeply. Hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of paying attention to that right now, isn't there?
And paying attention to how we may not have been breathing so deeply in the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I find it is not a coincidence. The poem hole that I went down was actually started. The entrance was shown to me a few weeks ago, and I was prepared to talk about this poem. But at the last minute, I received a message that another poem needed to be shared, which was "Better Times Will Come."
Mhm.
But this one, like its name, Standing Like a Tree, has been standing patiently waiting for us to share it. Hmm.
I'm excited. I can't wait to see what you have conjured to share today. Yeah.
Well, I feel like I must be channeling or tapping into or reclaiming my hippie self because here I come again with um, a real activist poem and song um, that was put into the world by a woman who has been leading the women's activist movement in the 60s, 70s, 80s, still now. And her songs and her poems are used all over the place. So I'm talking about Betsy Rose and her poem, Standing Like a Tree. So Betsy Rose is new to me. So I just thought I'd share a little bit about what I've learned about her.
Yes, please do.
She is a poet, a singer, a songwriter, and a community activist whose insight, warmth, and humor, wit, and wisdom have added a wealth of songs and poems to our world of folk and progressive music for over 40 years. Um, she is influenced by the songs of the civil rights movement, the hymns in her minister father's church, and her classical musical training. Other songwriters of the burgeoning folk movement of the 60s provided a rich soil and deep roots for her emerging gifts as a poetess, a songwriter, and a singer. Her songs are an artful blend of beautifully crafted lyrics and music with messages that inspire listeners to greater faith in the human capacity to create a world of peace, of promise, and of grace.
Wow. That's beautiful.
Yeah. So I really wanted to share. She's inspired some really wonderful movements. She talks about the events during and after 9/11, inspired her to form the Bay Area Singing for Peace Project. It's a group of non-professional singers gathering in the public sites like the Bay Area rapid transit stations, farmers markets. They sing songs of healing and peace. She also leads a woman's song circle, participatory singing events for women in the Bay Area and nationally. And I just started thinking about these women's song circles or women's poetry circles, but these circles of women gathering to share their wisdom and their words, not just with each other, but when we share within the circle, we're actually putting the wisdom and the energy into the greater world.
Mm.
And so I just there's something that felt kin about her when I read about these groups that she has been inspired to form by her words, her wisdom. So I think these are the things that were calling to me. And she has worked with children and families, including serving as a music specialist at Cornell School in Albany, California, and training teachers to use music to teach conflict resolution, diversity awareness, and social skills to young children. And this reminded me of, there is an Israeli artist named David Rosa. Are you familiar with him?
No.
Oh my gosh.
I need to.
So amazing. He is a singer-songwriter, born in Israel, family moved to France and then back to Israel again. And when he sings, he might sing in his native tongue, in French or in English, but it doesn't matter what language, you can feel the emotions in his songs. And he has partnered with Peter Yarrow from Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Okay.
And they have a nonprofit project in Israel using music to teach peace and conflict resolution. And so I'm a fan of both of theirs, but in Kerrville, I've been able to see them on stage together.
Oh, that reminds me of years ago, I heard Jean Houston give a talk, and she talked about in indigenous cultures that she has studied, they sing the solutions to resolve problems within the community, and they sing the problem, and they come together and they sing and sing until they sing the solution. And I always thought that was fascinating. Like, I wanted to see what that would look like. So
yeah,
this sounds like taking that concept another to the next level in current culture. Yeah.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah, music is so healing and unifying. It made me remember when I was young. I still do it now, but when I was young, I'd like to listen to foreign music and singers that I couldn't understand the words cognitively, which allowed me to really tap into the emotion of the songs. Now, when I was a kid, I didn't know exactly what was happening, but now I know it was this tapping into the emotion without getting caught up in the meaning of the words.
I think that's why things like Gregorian chant and Sanskrit is comforting. You don't have to know the words, you just know it changes, it alters your feeling state.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's powerful.
So the lovely Betsy Rose, I love this. She has a 27-year-old son who is an organic, regenerative, agricultural farmer.
Nice.
Yes. And she lives in Berkeley, California with her partner, David.
Well, I don't know her, but I love her already.
So the poem and the song is standing like a tree. And the research that I found, I am left with the image of how the song is sung in circles. And there are some body movements to move the energy of these words through. So coming from a yoga and Kundalini background and having this ability to put movements to each phrase of the song and move the energy and embrace the energy that accompanies the song, I felt was lovely. So the first time I'm going to read it through, I'll do the body movements. And the second time I read it through, has a couple tweaks by the Kundalini singer Snatam Kaur. She has taken this and she's added a couple words that help expand. She's also added some Sanskrit to it, but I'm not going to read the Sanskrit because I'm still learning Sanskrit. And then the third time I read it through, a duo called, they are Bern and Kristy, a singing duo, have taken this song, and they too have added some words of their own that again expanded. So we'll hear Betsy Rose's original, Snatam Kaur adds a couple words to expand, and then Burns and Kristy add a couple words that expanded even further.
Wow, it's a movable feast.
I know.
That's beautiful. It's become the kind of a community poem.
That's cool. So, Standing Like a Tree by Betsy Rose. Standing like a tree as I move my body into a tall tree pose. Standing like a tree. With my roots dug down, I'm stomping my feet into the earth with my roots dug down. My branches wide open. Come down the rain. Come down the sun. Come down the fruit to a heart that is open to be standing like a tree. Standing like a tree with my roots tucked down, my branches wide and open. Come down the rain, come down the sun, come down the fruits to our heart that is open to love. To be standing like a tree with my roots tucked down, my branches wide and open. Come down the rain, come down the sun, come down the fruits to our heart that is open to love. I am the ebb, I am the flow, I am the web. Standing like a tree, standing like a tree. My branches wide and open to our heart that is open to love.
Wow. Well, this poem lends itself beautifully to large community gatherings, something to teach children and have children teach the older people. And, you know, like it just kind of has that quality of getting you in your body. It's a great, great tool for getting you in your body and then connected to your heart.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Love
feeling
that.
Your body.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling, the energy around you. And yes, connecting and bringing this energy in yourself back to your heart center.
Yes. Yeah, tree energy has been very significant for you. Being rooted, just that need to be grounded is really, it's so interesting how this theme kind of just keeps finding you and visiting you from different angles and making these connections of really talented people and this global kind of connection phenomenon. I love that.
And you just described what this calling about the trees has been for me probably about the last year. when I was feeling kind of despair and feeling kind of alone. And I started looking around at the different women's circles that I was in, whether it was um, when we were still able to meet in circle or meeting online. It was just me and one other person or a few other people. But looking around, I realized, oh, I'm really not alone. But I had been feeling like I'm all alone in this forest full of emotions. But looking around in this forest, I'm really not alone because I'm with all my sister trees. And within this forest, how the trees support each other. They don't compete with each other. They don't judge each other. They're constantly paying attention who needs a little more sugar, who needs a little more of this, and that support. So that standing like a tree, rooting down all those roots under the forest floor, how they were connected together and supporting each other. So yeah, so being open to that now, all of these great songs and poems about trees and forests, and these songwriters, they just, I'd say they're finding me, but I feel like I'm actually open. They've been here all along.
Well, isn't that how it always works? You
Isn't
finally
it?
start pay attention,
When you
and
start paying
then you
attention.
can hear the whispers. You can see the little, glint that gets your attention, draws you over
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I um when I was very young, in the late 60s, we lived outside of San Francisco.
Mm.
So finding, these women that were so active in the women's movement in the late 60s, especially out of San Francisco, I feel, some kindred connection, that some seed was planted when I was very young.
Mhm.
Um, so I feel like I'm just reclaiming this.
Right. Well, and at that time in the, early 70s, when I think of when music started really for me, where I started recognizing how important music was to me.
Mm-hmm.
You were in a region of the country that was like just rich with, um, you know, beat poets and music, and maybe you didn't even know what you didn't know, but you were certainly soaking it up.
And
Yeah.
I was so fortunate to have parents who loved words and music, and a father who had such a diverse range of music that he could be playing classical music, in his study in the evening, but then quickly switch it over to the Beatles and could just go that easily. And that's what I was raised on.
Mhm.
So just feeling, it just burned itself deep down from the beginning.
Nice.
Yeah.
I recently reconnected with an old friend that I haven't really, it's like one of those people that you don't hear from for years, but then you hear from them and you just sort of pick up where you
Mm-hmm.
left off. And she had shared with me that she was in a women's circle that, um, she was really feeling some grief about, because they go into people's hospital rooms and
Mm.
homes, and they sing to the dying. And that for her was like this real nourishing contribution that just really made a big difference in her life. And because of COVID, and that's really kind of come to a standstill.
Right.
So I love this idea for her to figure out. It didn't really dawn on me. I just sort of listened to her, share that, and I acknowledged. But there's a time for reinvention. Because
Mhm.
really what I think, I mean, I know she's missing being of service, but I think she's missing that community of her fellow trees,
Right.
nourishment of cross,
Yes.
and finding another way of gathering to sing
Yes.
might be really empowering and beautiful.
Mhm. Yeah, missing that gathering and nourishment from
Mhm. And
fellow
it isn't
trees.
lost on me that we're heading into fall, and I look out the window, and as as this is going on, leaves are just like coming down, like there, to everything a season. This is the season of letting things go,
Letting things
kind of
go.
even letting things fall apart, because there's the greater trust that it's gonna it'll come back in perfect timing. And
Right. It's
so
that trust and allowing to trust that if if I let go of how I want things to fall apart, but that trust that yes, in divine timing and in their divine ways, things will come back um, differently. But that's not better or worse.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Hmm.
I love that. Well, maybe she can watch this and listen to the words of Betsy Rose and Snatam Kaur and Burns and Kristy and um, find some inspiration of ways to gather and sing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is power when we gather together and share our words and our music and our energy.
Hmm. It's
Mm.
interesting that our president elect is a huge fan of poetry, and I
Mm.
don't know if you have noticed the quotes, the poetic sort of quotes he makes often. And I know he's a huge sort of fan of an Irish poet named Seamus Heaney, I think his name, Seamus Heaney.
Mhm.
And you know Biden has recently been quoted by CNN, I think, one of the news outlets, I think it was CNN, is saying that poems help him hear, like reading poetry, listening to poetry helps him hear and helps him dream
Oh,
visions. And I was like,
I
oh my
love
god,
that.
that's one of the magic things that happens when you drop into the way words get sort of put together,
Mhm.
and you make them your own. It's such a fascinating thing to me that as we have gone through these months and months of COVID lockdown, how people have discovered poetry again, or
Mhm.
maybe for the first time, and music, and how nourishing it has been for so many of us.
Yes. And it gives us words for emotions and experiences that we're having that we may not know how to express or we may not know how to embody. Um, but poetry, can't remember the line, the poetry is words. My version of poetry is words that we can no longer deny or experiences we can no longer deny. So, well,
I
and that's what happened with you and I, Julie.
exactly.
We've known each other for a while, but in this time of COVID, um, this was a way for us to gather, not only just to gather with each other and see each other's faces, but a way to embody these experiences that we were having.
Right. It's sharing from a deeper level, another level.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I had, I've heard this poem, often kind of cited that Biden is kind of a fan of. It made me go on the hunt to find out a little bit more about Seamus. And I found this beautiful quote from him on poetry.
Oh.
And I'll share it with you now because I think it's just kind of a sweet full circle where he says that poetry is the only art form that knows its own mind.
Oh.
Yeah. I was like, all right, there's another poet I need to explore.
Oh, I see the doors opening to that rabbit hole.
That was beautiful.
Lovely.
Yeah. The only art form that knows its own mind.
The only art form that knows its own mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's super, Julie. Well, I sure had a lot of fun sharing Standing Like a Tree and being able to stand like a tree and embrace the heart. So thanks for going on this little journey with me.
Oh, I love that. And I think that's just a beautiful program of, of yoga practice.
Right.
Incorporating the, kind of even in rounds, the poem and going through the motions, Gosh, that like feels like it just opens up all kinds of energy.
Yes.
Pathways.
Yeah. And the recommendation of doing this 3 times. So, as my yoga teacher likes to say, because he'll run us through each pose 3 times, once for the mind, once for the body, and once for the spirit.
And so Betsy Rose, does she know that this particular poem is kind of taken on this path of its own and is becoming like somebody else's poem and somebody else's poem, and it's kind of...
Well, from what I can gather, that it is within her awareness to know that this poem is used in all kinds of circles. I don't know if she's heard how other people have added their few words in their recordings. But I find it interesting, just adding a few words just expands it even more and expands it even more. And when I read this poem out loud, I imagine groups of people in circles, big circles, little circles, standing like a tree, their branches out to the sun and moving this energy at the same time they're embodying the energy of this poem. And just imagine the good works that follow after you've gathered as a group in circle and you've moved through this poem, and then you go off. Just imagine the good works that you're putting into the world after this. That's my imagination, is when people gather and do this poem, then wherever they go, whether it's to the grocery store or to a protest, their actions are putting goodness into the world.
Well, indigenous cultures knew there was something about singing the problem to get to singing the solution. So, there's something potent in that.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you to everybody for sharing Standing Like a Tree with me today.
Beautiful. I'm glad you followed that punch to see where that was going to take.
Waiting. Is it my turn? Is it my turn? Is it my turn? So, well, I look forward to what inspires you next week, Julie.
Okay. Yeah, me too. I'm excited to see where it leads me. I've had a week really rich in poetry participation, which is really nice. And I do want to tell you about a couple of things. And anybody who might be, following along today, there is a woman out of the UK named Beth Kempton, and she has started a Tiny Autumn Poems
Oh,
site on Instagram.
okay.
And each day she will deliver one word, and she is encouraging people to take about 10 minutes to create a brief poem that incorporates that word in the poem and
Wow.
post it. So it's hashtag tiny autumn poem.
Hashtag tiny autumn poem.
Yeah. And today kicked off day 1 of 7 days.
Wow.
So I put mine out there already, and it'll be really fun. If I hope you want to play, because I think it's a fun little challenge to just be playful, just follow where it leads. And
Nice.
already when I posted this afternoon, there was already like 40 some posts. So people are playing along. So I thought that was really cool. The other thing I want to tell you about is an Irish poet, Padraig OTuama, is the poet in residence for a church out of New York. And they're hosting, I went to a program that he offered this week, which was just lovely. But the next one is December 12th. And the theme is Grounded in Hope. The season of Advent is the topic. And so something that he shared in this session that was just really fun, again, to me, and playful, was the concept of erasure poetry. And that's where you take a page out of a book, the newspaper, whatever, and as you're reading that story, you take a black marker and you just start editing words, and what remains becomes its own poem. And so that just seems like a fun thing to play with, and
that does seem fun.
Yeah, see where that goes. So I just wanted to share those because.
So we'll add this hashtag and the other link when we post the video.
Nice.
So anybody who wants to join, that would be so much fun.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for that, Julie.
All right.
All right. So have a lovely week.
All right. You too, my friend.
Hey, I'll see you next time.
All right. Bye.